I will tread the people down in mine anger, and make them drunk in my fury. And I will bring down their blood unto the earth. I will mention the kindnesses of the Lord and the praises of the Lord, according to all that the Lord hath bestowed on us.
Hello, good day. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Study. We're continuing today in the book of Ecclesiastes. We're going to begin, as always, by reading through the chapter we're studying. And since it's such a short chapter, we're going to read all the way to the end of the book today. So let's go. Cast thy bread upon the waters, for thou shalt find it after many days. Give a portion to 7, and also to 8, for thou knowest not what evil shall be upon the earth. If the clouds be full of rain, they empty themselves upon the earth. And if the tree fall toward the south or toward the north, in the place where the tree falleth, there shall it be. He that observeth the wind shall not sow, and he that regardeth the clouds shall not reap. As thou knowest not what the way of the Spirit, as thou knowest not what is the way of the Spirit, nor how the bones do grow in the womb of her that is with child, even so thou knowest not the works of God who maketh all. In the morning sow thy seed, and in the evening withhold not thine hand, for thou knowest not whether shall prosper, either this or that, or whether they both shall be alike good. Cover your bases. Truly the light is sweet, and a pleasant thing it is for the eyes to behold the sun. But if a man live many years, and rejoice in them all, yet let him remember the days of darkness, for they shall be many. All that cometh is vanity. Rejoice, O young man, in thy youth, and let thine heart cheer thee in the days of thy youth, and walk in the ways of thine heart, and in the sight of thine eyes. But know thou that for all these things God will bring thee into judgment. Therefore, remove sorrow from thy heart, and put away evil from thy flesh, for childhood and youth are vanity. Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. While the sun, or the light, or the moon, or the stars be not darkened, nor the clouds return after the rain. In the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men, shalom, peace, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease, because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened. And the doors shall be shut in the street, when the sound of the grinding is low, and he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. This is the King James. This is the part where we just read through the whole thing. Also, when they shall be afraid of that which is high, and fears shall be in the way, and the almond tree shall flourish, and the grasshopper shall be a burden, and desire shall fail, because man goeth to his long home, and the mourners go about the streets. Or ever the silver cord be loosed, or the golden bowl be broken, or the pitcher be broken at the fountain, or the wheel be broken at the cistern, then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return unto God who gave it. Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher, all is vanity. And moreover, because the preacher was wise, he still taught the people knowledge. Yea, he gave good heed, and sought out, and set in order many proverbs. The preacher sought to find out acceptable words, and that which was written was upright, even words of truth. The words of the wise are as goads, and as nails fastened by the masters of assemblies, which are given from one shepherd. And further, by these, my son, be admonished of making many books. There is no end, and much study is a weariness of the flesh. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole affair. Fear God, and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment, with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. And that's the conclusion of the wisdom of the preacher, Ecclesiastes. So we're picking up our analysis from back in earlier in chapter 11, which is a short chapter, and we've already gone through a little bit of it. Casting the bread, take risks, is how I interpreted that, right? And then 7:8. So, as thou knowest not what the way of the Spirit, nor how the bones do grow in the womb of her that is with child, even so thou knowest not the works of God who maketh all. Yeah, well, God's commands are eternal. I mean, if you're properly separating them, there's commands and there's statutes and ordinances. Not all things are the same, but the same principles really apply throughout all time. In some ways, people make a lot of distinction between the Old and the New Testament, but you can see shadows of everything. I mean, and that is, the law was a shadow of what was to come. But a shadow is an outline. It does represent the thing. And so there are eternal principles. So while as a Christian, I believe the law has passed away, but that doesn't mean like thou shalt not kill is of no meaning. Murder is still wrong. That's an eternal principle. That doesn't change. You shouldn't do that, period. Even if the old covenant is done, that's why in the New Testament, people get confused because you'll say things like when Paul talked about the law being done away, they get all freaked out because the law can't be done away. But no, there's a law of Christ. It's eternal. Yeah. Not sure what I mean. Commandment. Well, the only one commandment, sure. There's one commandment, but also from that stem all kinds of other ideas. It's like people say, oh, there's just one thing. It's like, well, that one thing means a whole lot, doesn't it? It's like there is not, it is the key. You're talking about like the linchpin commandment. You know what I mean? Yeah, no, now we're Christian, but the 10 Commandments have nothing to do with laws or ceremonies, I suppose. But once again, if you read 1 Corinthians chapter 3, Paul describes Moses coming down from the mountain, and his face was aglow. Oh yes, they are done away with. They're completely done away with. The 10 Commandments can't help you. They are not the glory which was. That's what Paul said, unless you don't believe what Paul taught. In 1 Corinthians chapter 3, or is it 2 Corinthians? This is in chapter 3 of the Corinthians, where he says, that which was done away. Yeah, well, look at Jesus said some things early in his ministry that later on he reversed. He told them not to take a sword with them early on. Then later on he reversed it and say, well, now you take a sword. So while the 10 Commandments may have been important at some point, they're not important anymore. That's why Jesus said when he disregarded the Sabbath, he said, the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. He is Lord of the Sabbath. He didn't say like, oh yeah, well, I got to still work. He did keep all the commandments, of course, as an observant Jew. But as far as the law, have you read Corinthians? I don't mind taking a slight detour. I even have a whole study about how the law is done away, because this law is most certainly done away. I would not go back. Not that, like I said, the Old Testament 10 Commandments, they're a shadow of what was to come. That means they're still true, but they're not the ultimate revelation of the truth. And as far as working salvation for you, they're useless. I'm sure you agree with that the 10 Commandments cannot save you, right? They're impossible for them to save you. You can't be saved by following the 10 Commandments. So what exactly are they? Two different laws. What do you mean? You mean like the law of ordinances and sacrifice and stuff like that, but then somehow the 10 Commandments are separate? The whole ark is gone. The ark, all those shadows and symbols and like something being in the ark does not put it in special reverence to me. Which laws were outside the ark? The ark itself was a part of the, it contained the mercy seat, right? A little confused. We did do Exodus, but the ark contained the mercy seat, of course. All right, here I'm going to bring something up. Because here's the thing. While I understand, here's the thing. I, as a Christian, teach the Old Testament. I teach Exodus. We taught through Exodus all the way to the end, every word of it. We looked at every law. We talked about every law. We considered every law. And there's something to be learned from every part of the law. Now, but as far as, let me see. Here we go. I'll bring this up on the screen. Right here it calls, he has made us able ministers of the New Testament, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter killeth, but the Spirit giveth life. But if the ministration of death, written and engraven in stone, that refers directly to the 10 Commandments, was glorious, so that the children of Israel could not steadfastly behold the face of Moses, for the glory of his countenance, which glory was to be done away. See, Moses came down from the mountain having this glorious countenance from being in the presence of God, who with his own finger wrote these commandments, engraved them on stone. But those were to be done away. That's what he is saying. That is clearly what he's saying. And he's saying, if that was glorious, now we're talking about administration of the Spirit, not ministration of death, which was what the 10 Commandments represent, because if you do not do them, you will die. And you must keep them. It includes Sabbath keeping, which is, again, leads to all kinds of debates, because which day? Saturday, Sunday, which one? And it becomes a legalistic thing. And also the idea of every man honoring every day alike. Now, we can honor the Sabbath in the Spirit, as I do. I mean, I consider the Sabbath to be a spiritual thing now in Christ. Christ, our Sabbath, right? We enter into him to enter into rest truly. Not through the flesh. But again, he says, if that which was done away was glorious, much more that which remaineth is glorious. And that which was done away, Moses put a veil over his face. I mean, and that refers very specifically to when he came down the mountain from the 10 Commandments. And that is the most sacred of all sacred things as far as of the old law. And that's why Paul talks about it, because he's saying that thing, Moses getting commandments from God, it's done away. You know why? Because it's been replaced. I can't be saved by it. You already said amen to that. So I think we have a little difference, a distinction perhaps without a difference, because I will just embrace what Paul says in 2 Corinthians 3. I'm sure you have some other interpretation, but one question. I don't care which day you congregate. I don't believe there is a particular day you should congregate. God doesn't care which day you congregate. He cares any more than he cares about Jerusalem, or in this mountain, or in this place or that place. He doesn't care. It's about in spirit and in truth. You can enter into the Sabbath immediately at any time. So I don't believe we should worship God every single day, every single moment, if possible. At one man honoreth one day above another, one man honoreth other day alike. Let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind. That's why I consider it a matter of conscience. Like you could decide, okay, I want to worship on Saturday. Now, as a man who feels like, okay, I have a higher understanding of that, but I should not despise someone because they have this conviction that we should worship on Saturday. Neither should they judge me because I have a conscience that tells me, no, you know what? Every day alike is the Lord's day. Just like every mountain a lot is the Lord's mountain. Absolutely sure. Yes, I've been studying this for 30 years. I'm absolutely sure. Yes. I know what God cares about. I've been paying attention to him. He cares about things like killing kids and things like that. Yeah. Every day, let's give glory to God. Yes. Worship. Yes. But which should you be kept holy? Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath. He went through a field and they were picking corn. You remember that scene? And they said, your disciples transgress the law. And he says, the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. He didn't say, no, they're not transgressing the law. Because I can show you an incident in the law where on the Sabbath day, they went out to look for manna. And he said, you always transgress my commandments because you were looking for manna on the Sabbath. There is no manna. Okay. So that was a transgression. Now Jesus, he says, no. I'm Lord of the Sabbath. I work on the Sabbath. That's another thing he said. My Father works and I work hitherto. It's okay to do good works on the Sabbath. And so he did things that were, and his attitude towards Moses' law. Yeah, I remember also his attitude. He's like, it is written in your law. He was very distancing himself from the law of Moses, which I find fascinating. Because, I don't know, it's like there's a lot to be said there. I mean, we both understand we are not saved by this law. So you're just like looking at it like that. But again, which day do we have to worship on? Well, what if I don't? I asked a brother once this, and I'm like, is it a matter of my salvation? Because he was a Hebrew roots guy who wore tassels on his pants and all this other stuff. Jesus never transgressed. I believe that. Sure, I believe Jesus didn't transgress. Sure. No, he didn't transgress, but he was Lord of. He did things that were technically illegal, like being crucified. He was a curse. Was he a curse? Did he become a curse? He broke the law right there. That's why he was what was the language Paul used? Because becoming, by being crucified and by being something that even the law says, cursed is every man that hangs on a tree. Well, was he a curse there hanging there? According to the law, he was. But according to God, he's the blessed Son of God. And that is why the law and why the veil in the temple rent in pieces. And you agree that some of it's passed away at least. Here's another thing I would put to you. I would put this to you. Jesus said that not one jot or tittle, you can't separate. Not one jot or tittle, not one little insignificant part of the law will pass away until all be fulfilled. Jesus either fulfilled all of it or none of it. It's either all passed away or none passed away. That's the way I look at it. I mean, you don't have to agree with me, of course, but that is the way I look at it. It's either all passed away or none passed away because that's the way Jesus laid it out. And I think he is going to be the ultimate arbiter of that. Yeah, so I don't care about, people think that, we got to worship on this day. I say, okay, go ahead. I'll take the risk. I'm quite not afraid of that. Jesus, I'm a Gentile. I don't have to live as a Jew. I don't honor their Sabbath. I don't have to be circumcised even if I am. And I don't have to do anything that they did in their law. Now, I can't be a killer because that's also in the law of Christ. There's almost nothing in the Ten Commandments that isn't still like somehow in Christ an important thing to do. Like entering the Sabbath still counts, but it's this much more deeper spiritual thing to me. And if you're not doing that, you better be at least spending one day a week making God holy, I suppose, right? Okay, let's see. I'm going to say, okay, brother, agreement, disagree? Okay. Everyone avoids reason. They don't congregate on Sabbath. They just stick to tradition. Well, here's the thing. One of the reasons I don't bother with church a lot of time, I have. And it's frustrating to me. I would go to church. I went to an Adventist church once, and they're very Sabbath keeping, as you may know if you've encountered them. They're very into their Sabbath. As a Gentile, should we keep pagan traditions? That's an interesting question. What is meant by that? Like their religious traditions? No, but what about secular traditions? You know what I mean? And what point? Because in some level, it's like, hey, secular traditions might be equivalent to religious traditions. I think each fruit has to be tested. What is the fruit of it? They just stick to tradition. Wait. As far as church goes, yes, it's a lot based on tradition. Yeah. And one of the things I don't like about church is when you go there, you don't get to have conversations like we're having. I mean, it's like, no, we're going to talk about baseball and basketball and football and my truck, and we're going to do that because we just had church. I mean, that's my, let's see, Apollo, sun worship, Egypt. Well, yeah, no, you shouldn't do that stuff, right? Yeah, but here's the thing. All that stuff, if there's stuff like that going on that, like for example, let's say my butcher's an Apollo worshiper, and I don't realize this, and I'm buying his meats. Do I have to care? No. Yeah, that's all ancient history. I don't, Constantine, everyone's all up in arms. Let me tell you the stuff that matters. Our behavior matters. Well, the problem with Christians today is they think that just because they believe they can do whatever they want, and that's not what belief looks like. That's what I would say. It's not about all this extra side, all this stuff about their traditions and Constantine. I was like, yawn, yawn, yawn. I need stuff that's going to help me on the ground. I need stuff that's going to help me live my life. I've got 8 kids to raise. I got to raise them right. I got a wider community. I got to bless. You know what I mean? I got to be a blessing to people. I don't have time for high-minded stuff about kings and nonsense from the past. I'm living now. Trying to deduce how this all got so effed up is just so beyond my pay grade. Like how this all got screwed up. It's just broken. It's just broken. And here we are. Each of us has the Bible in our hands. We got to answer to God. Like it says, we have to answer. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not joining anybody's club. I'm not getting on anybody's friggin' team. I'm on the Lord's team only. I have never, I'm so, all that stuff gets under my skin on a certain level because I'm just, yeah. Tradition, many keeping, drinking, but people still celebrate. He changed the Christian to pagan. Yeah, I get it. They combined those to make it. Look at, they converted the people just based on a king and stuff in the old days. That's like, you don't make Christians by saying, okay, you're a Christian now. That's not how it works. You know what I mean? Faith is something that it works inside you. It's from God. It's not something that comes from a king saying, okay, time, yeah, we should be different. But I mean, again, we're not. I'm different. I don't know. People always talk about how weird I am. So it's like, you mean Christianity be different? I guess. But the thing is, it's so screwed up. And here's the thing. That's to be expected. I mean, we're expecting a great whore. We're expecting foolish virgins. We're expecting apostasy. Even in the days of Paul, it was apostasy. He's just like, you guys are quickly being dragged away from the faith. And that's what happens. And the history of the world and of the church is kind of a disaster. But they're always trying to like make it somehow like, oh no, it's the church triumphant. It's like, no, it isn't. But I mean, somehow through it all, we are more than conquerors. But it's like you don't necessarily see it because God's work is invisible. And that goes back to our verse. We don't know which way is the way of the Spirit. We can't see what the Spirit is doing all the time. I mean, we can't see it. We don't know the works of God from the beginning to the end. We kind of know, we want to feel confident. I've actually grown comfortable not being confident, being unsure of things. My old confidence when I was young is gone away. Walk the same path. Masons. I don't wear rings. When I got married, I don't have a ring. I don't wear rings or jewelry. No, of course not. No, of course. I already tattoos, but I did cut marks in my flesh when I was young. I did do that. That's against the law. Of course, every sin can be forgiven, right? But the one, and even that one, I'm always a little bit skeptical. Well, one should not. Again, but here's the thing. What do they practice? They picked it up from somebody else, like the Egyptians or whatever. And here's the thing. I look at it like things sacrificed to idols. Like certain practices become associated with idolatry. And on some level, yeah, you got to be careful of that stuff, right? You don't want to participate with idols, right? But Paul was sort of threading the needle saying like, well, truthfully, an idol is nothing. And so, you can eat things sacrificed to idol if you understand that it's not really anything and that what they're doing with the meat is nothing except their own stupid made up crap. But what if you go to the temple and you eat it and then someone sees you? That's a problem, brother. So while it may be permissible, we have to think about the weak conscience of other people. So we shouldn't participate in things that are overtly pagan. Right. And the thing is, it's been so long. Like you look at things like Easter and all that stuff. The association with paganism is so distant and far. Is that really what's wrong with people? We don't see the pull or practice because after just 4 centuries, Hebrews forgot their God. Well, so like I said, I just think that what people's real problems isn't like that they're celebrating Christmas or rolling Easter eggs. Like that's not what's wrong with their faith. That's simply not what's wrong with it. That's what I would assert is like, well, those things are like symptomatic of people who are not really in tune with God. You know what I mean? They're not really paying attention to the word. You know, they're not really getting it. It's symptomatic. Yeah, they don't know why it was wrong. And so on some level, they have no conscience of it. What concerns me is when we do things that we know are wrong. You know, like you think about America being the pornography capital of the world and the biggest consumer of pornography. That's a problem. You know, that is like way bigger than Easter eggs. You know, way bigger than Easter eggs. And while you know, and I don't know very many people who think like that any of that stuff has anything really to do with it. Just like Christmas presents and Santa Claus. To me, it's like most people don't even think it has anything to do with it. Yeah, but it's like, I don't know. Here's the thing. I just, personally, we have a lot of liberty in Christ to use our conscience. And I'm like, well, I want people to, I like that my children obey me. Obedience. And to me, it's like, it comes down to things like washing of pots and cups. It comes down to every jot and tittle of the law type of things where it's like, okay, you know, hey, did you know this was once a pagan practice? Lighting campfires? You mean I can't have a campfire anymore because pagans used to dance around them? So campfires are representative of paganism? Well, actually, no, campfires go way back. Are rings really representative of, only... were the Masons the first to ever wear rings? Well, no. What is the actual origin of rings? Don't know. You know, we talk about signets. People about Halloween. I personally, I don't see what is the danger of Halloween? Like, what is it doing? You know what the biggest danger to me is? Preachers who tell Christians all they have to do is believe and that they don't have to do anything God says. To me, that is the most dangerous thing in the church today, is faith alone. That is the most dangerous thing. That is what is causing apostasy. That is what is causing people to leave the church. Faith alone. That is what is destroying everything. Disney and magic? No, I don't think so. It's a distraction. I mean, people, like, I don't know anyone who takes it seriously. Like, if someone's like a Disney freak, yeah, I mean, it's like you make a religion out of Disney. Because some people almost do, right? They love this garbage. Some of their comic books. Oh, I love the Marvel and all this garbage. And I'm so sad when the movies are bad. And Star Wars. And, you know, it's like, it becomes like idolatry for sure. It doesn't even have to be from ancient times. Deuteronomy 18, which part of Deuteronomy 18? I'm thinking, is it the prophet, the false prophet? All right, sure, I'll pull it up for you. No problem. This is going to go down as a hijacked study, by the way. Since you have so many questions, it's all right. I like questions and discussions. I'm bringing Deuteronomy 18 up. Here we go. Because you mentioned so many Disney, I had Elmo's song in my head. Another little devilish character from Satan. Which part of 18? I don't want to read the whole thing. The priests, the Levites, no inheritance. That's probably not the part you're looking for. The part about the prophet, right? Let me see, which part? Oh, magic, yeah. I mean, there is like a sort of a, like, I know there are people who take magic seriously. Not illusions. Illusionists, if they were using that and claiming to have power of God instead of like, whenever they do, like, it is a bit devilish, I would say, right? But then there's people who take magic seriously, like I'm going to craft a spell here that's going to get me a new job, right? That kind of stuff. Yeah, but like, do you think Disney is really pushing that stuff? See, what I think is like, if people we are slowly pulled towards it. Well, here's the thing. That's inevitable. It's inevitable. There's always going to be temptation in the world. Always going to be things pulling you away from God. And, of course, they're going to be subtle. Yeah, they don't know what they meant. But here's the thing. How the truth is, it's like, here's the thing. When I was young, I used to be like, they're doing the wrong thing. They're doing the wrong thing. They're doing the wrong thing. And it's like, okay, what's the right thing? You know what I mean? And that's why I do Bible studies, to teach people the right thing. You know what It's like, how do you actually behave? How do you live? How do you deal with your fellow human being? An avatar. An avatar is that little image next to your name. You have one, by the way. Are you an idolater? You have an avatar. You have an avatar whether you like it or not. So should you delete your Google account? Because you have an avatar. Again, they call it, like whatever your little image next to your name, that to them, they call that thing an avatar. And you have one whether you like it or not. You know, I mean, you're using an avatar. You're part of the problem. If that's indeed the problem. And what I say is, like, there were always false religions, false teachers, false doctrine. But what inoculates people is, I'm just saying, no, do you have to be that legalistic? Jesus held a coin with Caesar's image on it. A Caesar that people worshipped. And he said, all right, I'll pay my taxes because it's part of the world. I mean, you know, well, you could have a blank avatar, just refuse to put one up. You could just have the letter that they provide, and then you refuse to be part of the process. You're putting that little picture up of, like, that's me. You know, it's like, that's an image of me. That's like my avatar in this world. I mean, you're welcome. If that means something to you, you're very welcome. I believe so too, but like I said, I think what he was looking for is a perfection where you're not violating your conscience nor his commands. But the old law is not where I'm going to look for that perfection. I look to the law of Christ, which means I'm going to look to the New Testament morality, which also leaves some things open, like to conscience. Do you think there's any room for conscience? You know what I mean? Do you think there's any room for things that people like could disagree on, that God would be shrug and say, I'm not going to judge you on that because it's not really a major enough issue? You know, there's things where like Paul talked about things sacrificed to idols, where some were very adamant that you should never, ever do that. And then later on in his epistle, he sort of was like, well, you know, hey. And it's weird. Advent Defense League. No. What is that, trying to keep Christmas, basically? Not Christmas, but or whatever, trying to keep Advent. Basically, they're trying to keep the paganism out of our Christian holiday, is that, so to speak. But why should we even have a Christian holiday? I honor every day alike. I was always of the opinion, like, let's not do Christmas. You know, just skip it. Well, I'll check it out then. I don't know if I have any free time, but I'll make some time because I do that. Sure, I'll check it out. No, and here's the thing. I don't judge. That is more of something that'd be in danger to you, because obviously I'm more likely to look at someone and despise. But I don't despise you for feeling the way you do. I do not. For believing the way you do. I'll write it down. I'm writing it down. It's Advent Defense League. That's a channel, huh? Well, I'll check it out. There's nothing wrong with that. But as the thing is, wisdom tells me I don't. Yeah. Well, yeah, in that sense, I mean, there's things that God has judged. We know certain things are definitely wrong. Some things are definitely wrong. Other things we argue a little bit, right? It's like, hey, we're celebrating Jesus here, but there's paganistic elements which have crept in. I understand why that concerns some people. That's reasonable. I don't think that's like crazy or anything. I've come to peace with it. I've just sort of said, oh, I just can't. It's because, why people, one of the things is that when I'm trying to get through to people about stuff I care about, like because the thing is, I used to be big, like not only no Christmas, no pork. I was very legalistic. Not about the Sabbath, but Jesus was crucified on Thursday. Okay. Or Wednesday. I forgot which one I believed, honestly. Anyways, but I had more of an outlook, like I thought, well, hey, God wrote this law for a reason. If he said pork is bad to eat, there has to be some pragmatic reason, I thought. I didn't imagine it could be just purely arbitrary, much like the garment thing. Like, why did they have to have tassels on their garments? Well, it's to set them apart. But is there any pragmatic reason? Well, not really. Like a tassel does not, it doesn't have a function. It's mostly to designate them. Every Harry Potter series, every scary movie. You have that zeal of the converted. I can feel it. I remember when I was a new convert, I'm still very zealous. I tended to be a bit dogmatic because I learned things. And you learn things early on. You learn fast. And you care about it, so you want to talk about it. And you need to have people who will hear and also react. And, it's like, because it's not, you're not necessarily wrong. You know what I mean? I don't know that you're wrong. I binge watch that. Yeah. Magic. Yeah, I understand coming from that world, how, I remember when I was 19, I almost died of a drug overdose. And I turned my life over to God and I started reading the Bible seriously. I just started chugging the Bible. The channel Little Light Studies exposed these movies. No, I know they do pump them full of garbage, right? But to me, and again, well, this gets what I was talking about. I raised my kids Christian. They don't convert to Christianity. They are raised that way. And so they're taught, yeah. No, but they're taught and I had that change too, where I was living I wanted to just sleep with girls, get drunk, and party. And I almost died doing that, and I turned my life to God. Yeah. And I threw away all my music CDs, all my Megadeth and all this stuff. I got rid of all this music. And it was just, I wanted to break with my old life. And it had been a big part of my whole life. And I could see why to you that stuff would seem like poison, because you've been immersed in it. But there's also a place, remember, Jesus talks about them picking up serpents and not being harmed, them drinking poison and not being hurt. And not that you should tempt God. Of course not. That's something we're very much told not to do. That's fine. See, you're just coming out of it. So I would understand why now you want to make a clean break with your old life. You know what I mean? You celebrated Christmas, but you weren't a Christian. You celebrated Christmas, but you were living a pagan life. You filling your head with pagan ideas. And I can see why you would want to just shove all that stuff out of your life. I've seen the Harry Potter movies too. But it's to me, it was not something that filled my mind. It's something when I see the negative things in, I'm like, I can separate that stuff because I've been a Christian for a very long time now. It's been over 30 years. I'm 51, so it's been a while. And, so I'll look at something like that and I'll say, yeah, they talk about it being Christian. And it's yeah, it steals Christian themes of good and evil and all that, but it twists it into something that's a distraction from the truth and keeps your mind from the truth. And those things that come between you and God, you need to get rid of in your life. So I that's why I don't say oh no, watch those things. No, if your conscience tells you get away from it, get away from it. Not every Christian is going to feel that strongly because of where they are. Everyone has a different place they are in their walk. And so you may find that somewhat frustrating at times because, when you have that, I remember when I still have the zeal of the converted. That's why I'm still doing Bible studies 30 years later. It's I'm here, very few people listen, but I'm still doing the study because I'm very zealous over these things. But after over a long time, I learned that initial binge watching I was doing, while I learned a lot, I just learned what these guys had to say, and they didn't know everything. And then I went and learned more here, and it took me a long time. And now I'm at the point where I'm not sure exactly everything that I think I know. There are some things I do think I know. There's other things I don't. It's a big book, and that's why putting your faith in Jesus to know Christ takes us really. To me, it's like going to church on Sunday. If you're not knowing Jesus more in that time, then it's worthless to you. If every single day you're binge learning about the things of Scripture, you're already way ahead of the game. Go ahead, go to church on Sunday too. By all means, I'm going to be starting I was going to do a Saturday night service. That way it could plausibly be on both days. It could start at dusk, so it's Saturday, and then it goes to Sunday, and then it's Sunday. But because to me, it's more about what happens when you get together. What are you actually doing? Are you building one another up? Jehovah's Witness, yeah. Yeah, I've listened to some of those people. The Hebrew Israelites, sure. I was the white version of the Hebrew Israelites. The what do they call it? The Anglo-Israelite movement. That's when I was 19. I went into the teacher I wound up, because the thing was, the guy was like me, doing this line by line study, and he was doing 4 hours a night. Arnold Murray was his name, and he taught Anglo-Israelism, that the white people were the true Israelites. Later on, I realized I wasn't white enough for a lot of them, but because of the Italian thing, because for some people, Italians aren't white, you know. The only ones I saw that have been right, Advent Defense League. I'll check it out. I'll check them out. I'm sure they have a point, but I'll know that. Because it's like, there's always a point. You know, I'm not going to judge it before I go and hear what they have to say. But I'm generally not scandalized. I do like the fact that they're sort of talking about Jesus for part of the year. But the truth is, I feel like the error and the problem is in the church. It's like the world is always the world. The world is always trying to corrupt. You always are going to have the corrupting influence of the world and evil things like Disney and all that. Yes. But the church isn't doing its job. It's not preparing people to resist these things. It's not raising up children in such a way that they are able to defend themselves from these things and want to. A lot of times when kids are raised Christian, they become, I don't know, it's weird. I kind of let my kids go to like a vacation Bible thing for the first time. You know, like Little Light for teaching about anime, Marvel, DC, and stuff. Well, again, I guess my concern is not, though I know that stuff, for some people it is like a idolatry. But, you know, it's like when you talk, like when an evil spirit, Jesus told this parable, he said, when an evil spirit has gone out of a man, he goes about and finds all the places dry, and then he says, hey, I'm going to go back to my old place and see what's going on. This is a paraphrase. And he goes back and he finds it swept and empty, and he brings 7 more evil spirits, more wicked than himself. And the last state of that man is worse than the first. And it's like, what is he talking about? It's like, well, you know, whenever you tell someone, you take away their marvel, the things they really care about, just tell them it's evil. You know, it's like, that just, they have to have something else. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. Is like, we have to, somehow we've made Jesus unappealing to people. And I think it's partly because they never offer him with anything but sugar. I mean, Jesus, it always comes with a side of whipped cream and honey, which always just drives me nuts. I remember where he said that. I like the little life. Always stages back, yours sorry. Not sure what that means. That sentence came out kind of funny. I'm not zealot or... No, I'm just saying when you're a new convert, very often, there's a certain zeal, man, that comes with that. I was very zealous. I had zeal. I had passion, you know? Of course not. Of course not. I didn't mean that when I said that. Of course not. No, I just mean you really care and you're passionate about those things. The word zeal has more meanings than that. As far as there were the zealots, they were a sect, like you say, of murderous people. The zealots, right? But that's just a term they applied to them. You know, I mean, it's like the I don't know. Yeah. Yes, burning in fire. That's right. Fiery passion. That's a good thing. That's what Jesus said, I am come to set fire on the world. And what will I do if I find it already be kindled? He's going to be very pleased. That's why the Spirit puts fire into us, because we need to be on fire to be able to do the works of God. And when we're on fire, we do those works of God. We set the world on fire. And then Jesus comes and he's going to be very happy. With us anyways, right? Yeah, of course, not setting things on fire literally. I mean spiritually. I thought we were on the same wavelength there. Yes, of course, spiritually. We got spiritually set the world on fire. But that all that means is like, you're doing the work of God and it's spreading. This is a problem with the way the gospel spread a lot in the ancient times. In the early days, it was perfect. Well, it was good. It's spreading word of mouth from person to person, the gospel being preached. But then you get down to Charlemagne and Constantine, right? Charlemagne just converts, and then the whole nation is Christian suddenly. Well, what quality of Christianity are you going to get out of those people? And of course, they're going to want to keep all their traditions, and that's how this all happens. And they're not made Christians, and then so they're raising kids just the same old way. They're not transformed by the renewing of their mind because the church isn't doing all that work like it's supposed to. It's just telling them to believe these stories, and then everything's going to be wonderful. And while we are saved by grace through faith, that's not causing the transformation that should happen in people. And certainly the judgment is going to be more harsh against the house of God than against any people involved. I always think that, people who are just regular people honestly doing their best, I don't feel like it falls on them to sort out every detail of the faith, but rather to believe and to do what their conscience tells them is right. Yeah. And the responsibility falls to the people who teach, people like me, and maybe people like you. You're zealous, you may end up telling people stuff, so it's going to be your responsibility perhaps. Because when you have that kind of passion, it ends up, you have to do something with it. You end up, my Bible saying all kinds of things, asking all kinds of questions. You end up other places doing all kinds of things. That's what passion will do to you. And it's a good thing. It's given of God. That's why he gives you the Spirit, to make you care about these things and show you the way to go. We're still stuck on verse 5. Yeah. Well, it's normal because that is the normal effect. When people, get saved, they are supposed to, there's this transformation that's supposed to happen. There's supposed to be, the passion's supposed to come, the fire of the Spirit. And then they'll just tell the whole country you're a Christian now. And like, oh yeah, that just happened because we waved our hands. We shook the water over you and we flung some incense around. That's not Christianity. Yeah. No, I understand. You want people to, I always say, at one point I was getting very strict and I was like, everyone's got to believe the right thing. It's all, because it's heresy. Like if I don't have the Sabbath right, that's a false teaching. That's technically a heresy. A heresy is sin. People that do heresies, they're not going to inherit. But it's like, there is magnitude. Not all, even though Jesus said, like, if you look on a woman to lust after her, you've already committed adultery within your heart. Okay. So I know that matters. But is it really the same thing quantitatively? What it means is you can be judged on that, but it doesn't mean that it's the same. My wife certainly doesn't think it's the same. She doesn't think it's the same. There's a qualitative difference of that sin. And there are many other things too, where every sin matters, but we also know that we've been forgiven and we ought to forgive others. And especially on these things where it's like we're all arguing about it. So it's obviously not as clear as some people think. If it was perfectly clear, we would all agree on everything. His ways are so complete, like biology, like DNA, like, assuming like the microscopic world. Yeah, his works are amazing. They are complex. Complex. They're so complex, the laws are not just a bundled together and done away with. Well, not done away with, superseded. It becomes old, like the Old Covenant. You don't think the Old Covenant is still active, right? And so why would the laws that the Old Covenant are based on be still active? Again, I was not made under that covenant as a Gentile. Yeah, I know, but none of them pass away, not one jot or tittle, till all be fulfilled. You can't just do away with part of the law and say like, well, no, he fulfilled all the law. And when Jesus said, like, think not I am come to destroy the law, I am not come to destroy, but fulfill. I think he was kind of being ironic there because he did come to destroy the law. That's literally what he did, in my opinion. That's how I look at it. Old covenant is the new, and the new, Well, they're similar. Like Paul said, the law is a shadow of things to come, but the body is Christ. Christ is the actual thing. The law is a shadow of him. And as long as, I mean, here's the thing. The argument is like, well, what? You're looking at the Ten Commandments. It usually comes down to the Sabbath because there's nothing else that anyone else would say. That's the only issue in the Ten Commandments. And perhaps idolatry, graven images for like Catholics because they have graven images and stuff. And I understand how they justify it, and it's an interesting argument, but I don't buy it. I know they don't worship the idols, but I'm like, I don't know why you're making the idols. Why are you making the idols? I don't know. Why? Don't make idols. Even if you're not worshiping them, don't do that. He did not complete Passover on the cross. Oh, later in Acts. Well, okay, if he did, but he did complete it then. Maybe not, that's a technical matter you're talking about, when he completed it. But he did complete it, did he not? I don't know. Again, to all be fulfilled, it all depends on what his focus is there. I mean, did he mean everything that ever has to be fulfilled in everything, or did he mean all in what I'm thinking about here in this aspect of the law? It's a point that you could contend over. Because I'm not like the idea. I just go with the idea like, no, Paul seems to indicate, like I said, read 2 Corinthians 3 to yourself several times and think about it. It's like, I can show you in the Old Testament when he refers to Moses' face shining, his face shone with a light, and that which was graven in stone. And the only part of the law that was written in stone. I mean, like I said, I'm not sure I've heard people with your point of view on many occasions, that the law is still in effect. You understand the fact that we're having this argument is because of 2 Corinthians 3. There's a reason you still have to argue that it's in effect. It's because there are scriptures that lead people to believe it isn't. And the main thing, like, here's what I always say, like, if I have an opposing point of view to someone, like I believe in what they call annihilationism, right? So if I'm going to push that point of view to someone, I have to answer all the arguments people have against my point of view. You know what I mean? No, I know it's complex. It's a very complicated question. That's why I say you have to. But my point is, like, as you deal with it, this is going to come up. Meaning, if I was someone who was going to try to explain to people that, no, the law is in effect, I need an explanation of this passage so I can tell them, okay, here's how I interpret this. This is, like when he says, the ministration of death written and graven in stones was glorious, so that the children of Israel could not steadfastly behold the face of Moses for the glory of his countenance, which glory was to be done away. And then going down, you read through the rest of it, he makes it quite clear, not as Moses, which put a veil over his face, so that the children of Israel could not steadfastly look to the end of that which is abolished. I think in Paul's mind, the law was abolished at that point. Again, that's how I read it. I need someone to explain that to me, how that doesn't mean that. You know what I mean? Yeah, well, you figure it out. Again, everyone, that's what I'm saying. It's like when you have a particular point of view, there's going to be things that are going to come against that. You can say, okay, so if this passage makes people, it's like the Trinity, people get really up in arms about the Trinity. I used to be against the Trinity, but after a while I realized, I'm like, it's actually the most sensible explanation. On the one hand, you have the Jehovah's Witnesses that say one thing, and then you have like the oneness Pentecostalists who say the opposite. Some people say he's an angel. Some people say, no, he's God, and they're one and the same. And that actually what happens is like the Trinity is kind of trying to deal with all this scripture and the complicated nature of God, which we don't really, like God has revealed himself to us in part. We don't know fully what God is. And so you're already dealing with something that's sort of an approximation, a description of the nature of God. He's a Trinity. Well, he revealed himself in some sort of triune thing where you see the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, in this thing. I love that passage, right? Or on the Sabbath days. Don't let people judge you about it. No, I agree. And whether you're keeping them, whether you're not keeping them. I don't judge people. They really feel if they felt Saturday was going to be the day to worship. Though, like I said, when I go to their church and on Saturday, their worship is very worldly. And, I mean, it's like, I get kind of offended at that. I'm like, this is your holy day. Why profane the holy day? If people keep a day holy, then keep it holy. And that impresses me when people keep that day holy to the Lord. Because if you believe in the Sabbath, you should keep the Sabbath. And keep it with all your heart. I definitely think that. Like, follow your conscience until the Lord teaches you differently. I would never tell a person to do something that is against their conscience. Especially, because, again, if they're convicted that God says this and it's a commandment from God, then you do it. And, by all means. And I would I'll continue to consider it because it is something that one could argue about. Like, to what degree do we have an obligation to keep these old things? Now, of course, like I said, the 10 Commandments, there's not a lot of argument there. The only one that really we could dispute about would be the Sabbath. You know what I mean? Because, like, no one's, like I said, or idolatry, maybe for the Catholics. And that's about it. Because everyone's going to say, well, murder we know is wrong. It's in the New Testament too. And many other, stealing, coveting, all that stuff is strictly forbidden. Honoring your father and your mother, well, it says so in the New Testament too, right? Well, again, is the Sabbath a ceremonial law that managed to get into the 10 Commandments? Because it's not a moral law. It's about what day you're making a holy convocation on. You know what I mean? It's like, what do people do on, what is keeping the Sabbath mean to Christians? I'm going to ask you this question because to me, like I said, doing this Bible study, working on my scripture music, studying the Bible, that every single day, entering into his rest, to me, that's keeping the Sabbath. Now, if a Christian's keeping it on Sunday, like I said, what are they keeping? Are they just going through the emotions of worship? Then how is that any different? You know what I mean? It's just ceremonial. Then the Sabbath is just a ceremony to them. And then it's like, no, we have to keep the Sabbath holy. If we're going to keep the Sabbath, let it be holy. I'm going to look at this and I have to wrap up. Let's see what scriptures you got for me here. Ceremonial laws, Galatians equals Leviticus 23:4. Let's look at Leviticus. Leviticus 23:4. If I got that right. If I don't, I'll go back and look at it. I'll bring it up on the screen. We'll see. Are these passages indeed the same? Well, okay. You're saying this is what it talks about. Well, again, like I said, then what is the Sabbath but a ceremonial day? And I know generally, I know what the argument is that when it talks about the Sabbath they're talking about special ceremonial Sabbaths and not like the weekly Sabbath and all that stuff. Again, but I combine that with the other places where similar things are said. And also what Jesus said. His attitude towards the Sabbath was, I'm Lord of the Sabbath, and my disciples can do things that normally you can't do on the Sabbath. Because that's what he says. He says, didn't you hear what David did? And those that were with him, how they took the shewbread, which was not lawful for them to eat. And his assertion is not that we're not breaking the law. It's that I'm Lord of the Sabbath, so it's not law breaking. That's a different kind of thing. What he's asserting is his authority to say, no. Whereas just like when he said, don't take a sword early in Luke, and then later on he says, take a sword. He says, if you don't have a sword, sell your garment and buy one. Yeah, I could think of explanations for that. But, so while the ceremonial laws, the ceremonial laws are principally what have gone. But then, okay, you're saying the ceremonial laws, well, okay, then the laws concerning slavery are certainly still in effect. Right? And the selling of you can sell your child if you like. Those are still in effect because those aren't ceremonial. Those are legal matters. Those are moral matters. There's a lot of law. I mean, have you studied the law? Because I'm saying once you become, okay, if you're saying only the ceremonial laws are done away with, then you got a lot of stuff that's not ceremonial to look at. There's a lot of stuff in the law. For example, one of the things the law says, one of the reasons I do not accept this, and you probably never get me to accept this, because according to the law, Deuteronomy, it's at the beginning of a video I made, of a song I made. And it's basically this: he that is wounded in the stones, or have his privy member cut off, shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. It means a man who does not have his full arsenal of, like if you're missing a testicle or lost your penis, right? And I happen to have been born with one testicle, right? So I am excluded. When I say I'm not just a Gentile, I'm a deformed person. And according to the law, I'm unclean and I cannot enter into that place. And that's why I reject the law. I reject the law completely. That is, again, because it is against me. It is only ministration of death. And that's all you'll find in the law. You need to go study the law, is what I would say. Yeah, Moses' law is not God's law. You're right. When you read that law, but I'm saying, like, where do you draw the line? Is it just the 10 Commandments? I'm like, the 10 Commandments are the only ones that were specifically mentioned as going away. Which is funny. All right. No, I mean, Leviticus 23 mentions ceremonial laws, but it's not like, that doesn't mean that, again, 2 Corinthians 3. Again, the law written and graven in stones. I'm not talking about the stuff Moses wrote. I'm talking about the stuff that was written with the finger of God, and then Moses came down from the mountain glowing. That's the stuff that passed away. The ark also is gone, and everything in it. That's seen in the temple, of course, of God in Revelation. So, but there it is. Whether it goes in the ark, again, all that stuff to me is like, it's a schoolmaster to bring me to Christ. And I found Christ. And so I still go to school to learn, but I just learn there. So, again, while a lot of Christians trouble themselves trying to keep some of the law, I keep the law by studying it. And I think that's the best thing. All right, let's see. And this is going to be the last thing, and I'm going to close it up for the day. I think that because it was only made it into the ark in the sanctuary. And the New Testament talks about new sanctuary within us. Sure. We talk about the new sanctuary, new ark, heart, flesh. Yeah, and the commandments of Christ and the new law. Because the old law is insufficient. It's not good enough, thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt know that if you are angry with your brother, you're in danger of the judgment. If you look on a woman with lust, you are already in the realm of adultery in your heart. And that's not in the law. That's what I'm saying. You understand, the Old Testament commandments are insufficient. That's the problem with them. That's what's the problem. The Sabbath commandment, keeping just a certain day to God, it's insufficient. It lends to people being nominal Christians, nominal believers. They need to ultimately being obedient to God every day, not just living a once a week type of belief. Now, it's fine to have that once a week experience where you come together and worship. I'm going to be doing that soon, actually. I haven't done it in many years, but I'm going to be starting church again. I went around to several churches, and I got so disgusted, I was like, I just got to start my own church, I guess. By letting Jesus enter us and him doing it for us. Amen. But what I would say is, you will find, you've been a Christian a short time. It's like when I teach my kids to ride a bike. I help them. I don't do everything for them. He does everything for you in regards to salvation. There's nothing you can do to add to that work. There's nothing you can do to save yourself. There's nothing we can add to that. But when it comes to us being his workmanship, he does the works in us. But there's fellow workers with him. That's what it says. We are his fellow workers. That's why we sit with him in his throne. He wants to bring us not as babies, but to raise and grow us up so that we're capable. So that we're not babes who don't know our right hand from our left. One day stop from sinning? I think that's pretty shallow, honestly. It's like, I won't sin on the Sabbath. Oh, good for us. No jerking off on the Sabbath day. Well, that's a nice thing to do. Tomorrow you can get back to your normal business. I'm not a fan of that, okay? I mean, it's a nice start. It's a nice start. I'd like to not sin all week. You don't have to sin all week unless you got bad habits, and then you got to work on those bad habits. You know what I mean? Like, because it's like most sins should take you unawares. Like you get suddenly angry at something. It's like, oh no, I got to deal with anger now, and I got to be careful about sin. I don't, accidents. Governor, yeah. Well, they want people to work. Well, there's work done every day, like Jesus said. Which of you would not get your cow out of a pit on the Sabbath day? There's always something. Ambulance drivers got to work on Sunday or Saturday, whichever day you prefer. I haven't ever actually asked, right? Usually when it's strict, you're going to go for Saturday. I'm assuming, because that was the traditional one from ancient times. Sunday is something that came along later. It's something that the Christians, we're gonna just start doing it on Sunday. I think they did because I don't think they were mindful of the Sabbath anymore. They were like, we'll have ours on a different day. I don't know. I will check it out. You mean I wrote it down. You can see it right here. Advent Defense League. All right. Okay. Thanks for joining me. Look forward to being back again next time, probably tomorrow. Sometimes things come up. It's usually between 2 and 3. Sometimes it's earlier. Sometimes it's later. But sometimes it's not at all because things happen. I live out in the middle of nowhere, and sometimes the internet just goes on me. And then I can't even tell people why I'm not here. I'll check it out. I'm sure they'll have interesting things to say. I always learn even if I disagree. It should be about rest, right? Rest in the Lord and in the power of his might. You got nothing to worry about. All you got to do is listen to him, and he will show you the way. He doeth the works. That's true. The Lord in us does the works. But we participate with him. It's like, because the works are happening. I mean, it's like, I'm not being puppeted, but somehow I am being puppeted. It's a weird thing. As you please. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. It's fun to have a little different kind of conversation as opposed to just the same old, same old. Ivor Myers. Oh, another. Okay. So you want me to look into Ivor Myers also? Just for fun? That's just another thing? It's funny, that name. I always thought that name wasn't real. The only person I ever known with that name Ivor was Ivor Biggin. He was the profane musician. Anyways, Ivor Biggin. Okay, I'll check it out. Until next time, remember the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy, and I always say he is the fulfillment of the law. Yes, sir. Fun. It is fun. I can have fun with it. Some people don't. They're too serious about themselves. You know what I mean? Like what they think. What they think they know. Until next time.
And I will tread the people down in mine anger, and make them drunk in my fury. And I will bring down their blood unto the earth. I will mention the kindnesses of the Lord and the praises of the Lord, according to all that the Lord hath bestowed on me.